Hi everyone, Rabbi David Tawil here with Mishna Study, Masechet Shevuot, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Vav. Mishnah Vav is going to talk about Shevuot that are made on mitzvot, either to perform a mitzvah or to negate a mitzvah, both a mitzvah ta'aseh and a mitzvah lo ta'aseh, and how the oath is processed, what a person would or would not be liable for, should he violate the oath or violate the commandment in the Torah. The Mishnah reads as follows: Nishva levatel et mitzvah velo bitel. Someone who made an oath to negate a mitzvah. So negating a mitzvah could either mean he's not going to perform a mitzvah ta'aseh. A person makes an oath that he's not going to put on tefillin in the morning, or he's going to negate a mitzvah lo ta'aseh by performing a mitzvah lo ta'aseh. In other words, a person says, I'm not going to keep Shabbat. I'm going to violate the Shabbat. Both of these would be examples of levatel et mitzvah. If a person took on such an oath, velo bitel, but then he did not carry through that oath. In other words, he did not transgress the mitzvah. He put on his tefillin, or he kept the Shabbat. Now he have a tug of war. On the one hand, he kept the mitzvah in the Torah. The problem is he made an oath that he wasn't going to keep the mitzvah in the Torah. So what happens with his oath? Is he in violation of his oath? Says the Mishnah, patur. He is exempt from the chiyuv of korban for violating Shevuot bitui, for violating an oath of utterance, such as the hara or lehetiv. The logic over here is that his oath is mushba ve'omed already mehar Sinai, and therefore the oath does not take hold. The Shevuah does not take hold. But even more than that, if you look at the commentary of the Rambam says that we learn this from the pasuk lehara or lehetiv. That's been the critical words in the Torah. He says, Amar Rahmana, the Torah said lehara or lehetiv. An oath that a person does, which is going to be bad for him or good for him, which basically means, he says, that it has to be optional for the person. It has to be something that is objectively good or bad. So eating is objectively good for the person. Starving oneself is objectively bad. And so therefore, when the Torah says that you're taking your oath, lehara or lehetiv, it has to be something that is clearly good or clearly bad, no matter what, which can only be applicable to optional things. He says, Omnam, it has to be that it's an oath that a person takes on in something that it's impossible that it'll be good in a place where it's bad, or it's going to be bad in a place where it's good. It's only something which is optional. So for example, a person says, I'm not going to eat bread. He's starving himself. That's lehara. If a person says, I'm going to eat bread, that's lehetiv. But the minute a person, let's say, puts that in the context of hametz on Pesach, a person says, I'm going to eat hametz on Pesach. So eating hametz is a good thing for his body. The problem is doing it on Pesach is bad because he's violating a mitzvah. So as a result, it's something that could be good or could be bad. And once you put it in the context of a mitzvah, it's now something which is not objectively good or objectively bad because the mitzvah can undermine that objectivity. And hence, he says, when the Torah says lehara or lehetiv, it was never referring to things that are already mushba ve'omed, things that are already legally outlawed or required by the Torah, because now the lehara or lehetiv is undermined. You cannot objectively look at lehara or lehetiv when you're looking at it in the context of the mitzvah. And therefore, he says, levatel et mitzvah is not included amongst the oaths of lehara or lehetiv, and therefore it's not included in Shevuot bitui. It is worth noting, however, that all of the commentaries agree that in this first line, when he says patur, it means patur from Shevuot bitui, but he is still liable for Shevuot shav, for making a vain Shevuah in vain. Why? Because to make a Shevuah about the Torah, about something which you're not allowed to do, is a useless Shevuah. And as a result, he would still be liable for that Shevuah. On the flip side, the Mishnah says, if a person made an oath, lekayem velo kiyem, to uphold a mitzvah in the Torah, so he made a swear that he's going to put on tefillin, or a swear that he is going to observe Shabbat, velo kiyem, and then he did not uphold his swear, which means he did not put on tefillin, or he did not observe Shabbat, there too, patur, there too he is exempt. Now, why is he exempt? Because again, the same logic that Shevuah does not itself take hold because it is about something that's within the Torah, and it doesn't fit the lehara or lehetiv, it's already mushpa ve'omed. In this case of patur, however, he's patur even from a false swear as well. He's patur from Shevuot shav as well. Not only Shevuot bitui, but also Shevuot shav. The commentaries explain over here the reason for that is because a person who takes an oath to do a mitzvah we don't consider that a swear in vain, because a person will often do that in order to be mezarez, in order to motivate himself even more than is already there from the Torah to perform the mitzvah, and that's something that we're okay with. So it's not something that we recommend, but at least he has a positive intention in which the Shevuah has a goal, and therefore it's not considered a false swear. It's not considered in vain. It has a purpose to it. To negate the mitzvot of the Torah, that is in vain, and therefore he's hayav from that standpoint in the Resha of this Mishnah. But in the Sefa, of at least the first part of the Mishnah, he would be exempt from everything. In the case of lekayem velo kiyem is patur. Now, why does all of this even need to be discussed? Why is it not obvious? Says the Mishnah, shehaya badin, because one could have reasoned against this idea that one should be liable for transgressing the oaths of upholding or negating mitzvot in the Torah, based on the approach of Kedivrei Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera's approach. What did Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera say? Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera said, Ma'im hareshut she'eno mushba aleha mehar Sinai, in the case of something which is reshut, something which is optional, where a person is not sworn to do or not do this thing from Har Sinai, hareu chayav aleha, and yet the person is liable for it. Mitzvah shehu mushba aleha mehar Sinai, when it comes to a mitzvah which the person is already commanded upon from Har Sinai, does it not make sense that he should be liable for it? In other words, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is saying, if we're liable for transgressing swears about mundane issues, would we not also be liable for transgressing swears about holy matters? It would seem that would be even more hamur. The kala over here is the case of mundane matters. The hamur over here in his eyes is the case of mitzvah matters. And he's saying, if we find the stringency that you're hayav on violating your oaths about mundane matters, of course we would say you should be hayav for violating your oaths about holy matters. This was the logic that Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera had, trying to make a kal v'chomed, to make one liable for transgressing his oaths about mitzvot. Now, we'll pause here for just a minute. It has to be that we're talking about, based on Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera's kal v'chomed, only about the second of the two clauses at the beginning of the Mishnah, the idea of kiyem, lekayem velo kiyem. Because the logic only makes sense that Rabbi Yehuda would want you to be liable for making a swear on the laws of the Torah when the swear was to uphold the laws of the Torah. In other words, he's saying, if I make a swear to eat something and I don't eat it in a mundane matter, I'm hayav. If I make a swear to put on tefillin, which is a mitzvah, in order to encourage myself to do it, and I don't do it, of course I should be liable, not just for not putting on tefillin, but also for making a swear that I was going to put on tefillin. That's where the logic of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera works, that the hamur case is upholding the laws of the Torah. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera would never reason that logic in the case of negating it. He would never say that it's a kal v'chomed that you should be liable if you made a mitzvah to violate Shabbat. If you made an oath to violate Shabbat and you didn't violate it, you should be hayav. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera would never say such a thing, because that's not what he wants you to do. He doesn't want you to violate Shabbat, and there the kal v'chomed doesn't fit. So the kal v'chomed only works for the second of the two clauses in the beginning of the Mishnah, the lekayem velo kiyem patur. That was Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera's logic. The rabbis refute that logic, as we mentioned in the beginning. Amrulo, the rabbi said to Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, lo, your logic is faulty. Im amarta b'shevuat hareshut, when we say that a person is liable for transgressing a shevuat hareshut, a mundane shevuah, sheken asad ba lav kehen, it's because he turned something that was a lav into a hen. In other words, his words are able to change something that was optional into something that was mandatory, because that's what creates the reality of lehara or lehetiv. You're taking something that is objectively good or bad, and you're turning it from something optional into something that's mandatory. That's the power of your words. That's why you're liable for it. Tomar, would you make the same claim b'shvuat mitzvah, on a shevuah of a mitzvah? Shelo asab balav kehen. He didn't transform anything over there. It was already mushpa ve'omed, what he has or has to do or may not do. So it's already there. For you yourself, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, agreed to us that if a person made a swear levatel, to negate a mitzvah in the Torah, and he didn't negate it, would you make him hayav? No way, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. Your kal v'chomed would not agree to that. There's no way you would say that a person who made an oath that he's going to violate Shabbat and then didn't violate it is hayav for making the shevuah, shevuat bitui at least. Again, shevuat shav we leave on the side, but shevuat bitui, you Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera would say is hayav. Your kal v'chomed doesn't work like that. You don't want that person to go ahead and violate Shabbat. So even you would agree with patur. So just like you agree in the case of nishba lebatel velo bitel that it's patur, because you're not making a lav into a hen, and it's not something you want to do when you're kava homer, the same would go lekayim velokiyim, that it should also be patur because you're not turning a lav into a hen. So it's all about, when it comes to Shevuot, turning something that is mundane and optional from a lav into a hen through a person's words, something which will be objectively good or bad based on the person's own words, not when you contextualize it with the mitzvah that surrounds it. And as we might expect, based on the Hachamim's retort to Rabbi Yehuda b'Tera, says Harambam in halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda, the halacha does not follow Rabbi Yehuda b'Tera. In this instance, we follow the Hachamim that any Shevuah that's made within the context of a mitzvah, a person is patur. It is again worth reiterating that in some cases there'll still be hayav Shevuat shav, but as far as Shevuat bitui is concerned, they will be patur.